Dunedin in 1977, orientating myself to my roots after living and working in Auckland, UK and in other countries. I felt like a horse with blinkers eating its chaff from a nose bag as I felt my horizons had shrunk. It was quite an adaptation for me actually to live in Dunedin again, especially being at the physio school, which was now under the Otago Polytechnic, headed by Billy McLeod. There were some great people on the staff though. On the first day, Pat Woods, who was retiring, took me around, and I knew she was pleased to have someone on the staff who was interested in paediatrics. Although it was an interesting experience being there for 2 years, it wasn't very easy as I had to fight to retain some sort of clinical load. I said, if I just end up teaching, I shall fossilise in the classroom, and the school needs to be aware that I do not want to lose all my clinical skills. So I've really got to continue to work with children. So an arrangement between Health Hospital and the physio school was made, and they allowed me to have 2 neurological clients who are adults, and also to go into the Vera Hayward Clinic where children with developmental neurological difficulties came. I worked with some really wonderful people there, the 2 Shirleys, and I took some physio students with me, which was great. So with negotiations, concessions had been given. I enjoyed teaching physio students very much, as it was nice to be able to share some of the adult and paediatric neurological knowledge and experience that I had learnt overseas. However, one of the difficulties was that staff had to be orientated into other areas that they weren't familiar with. I was popped in with Grace, who was a savant of anatomy. She was a marvellous teacher. I was under her wing to teach little sections of anatomy. I had to swat furiously 2 days before for that little patch of anatomy that I was going to be teaching. I was terrified that I might be asked something out of context, so that I had to draw on background that I did not have. I was on the borderline of being out of my comfort zone, as it was a totally different experience from teaching core material that was very familiar to me. On my return to Auckland in the late 70s to the present time, now we are in 2012, I suppose my main absorption has been related to clinical work with adults and children and teaching, leading New Zealand postgraduate Bobath Neurodevelopmental Therapy or NDT 8-week courses, paediatric courses, designed for occupational therapists, speech language therapists and physiotherapists who work with children with cerebral palsy and allied neurological conditions and those with developmental delays, has been my focus. The fact that even before I arrived, there had been a cerebral palsy therapist trust set up by Lindsay and John Bull and friends due to links with Kitty O'Brien, physiotherapist, who had been working with the Bull's son at Carlson School for Children with Cerebral Palsy. They had been made aware of the lack of postgraduate teaching for therapists in New Zealand working in this area. So the first course was in 1978, and Roberta Shepherd, Janet Carr and Janet Aiken, excellent physiotherapists, came over from Sydney, and we all lectured on the course. So that really was the beginning of New Zealand's cerebral palsy 8-week courses. Due to a high demand from therapists throughout the country, we also had courses in 1979 and 80 with help from the Australians. In 1982, I applied to the Bobath Centre and asked if we could call them Bobath courses if we followed the Bobath Centre curriculum for international certification. Jenny Bryce, my old mentor, physiotherapist, came out from London and gave us a refresher course, so that updated the therapists who had done courses previously. We have tremendous appreciation for the trust and the effort and support they have given us until we became more independent from 2000 onwards. We aim to have basic 8-week courses every 2 to 3 years, and apart from a gap of 8 years between 1988 and 1996, we have kept them running over time. It became obvious that courses depend on trained certified tutors, and although 3 therapists went back to London to do second courses to begin the tutor pathway and assisted on New Zealand courses in the 1980s, these potential tutors dropped off for personal reasons, hence the gap in course delivery. With a high demand from therapists throughout the country for more courses, in 1996 I definitely had to go back and update in London and do a refresher course. So I taught in the Bow Centre in Cardiff, Wales, taught and updated at the new modern Bow Centre in London, which had been moved to East Finchley Road. The centre was still an inspiring place to be in, with children and parents coming from all corners of the globe. And Dr. Carol and Mrs. Berta Bobath, as the creative founders of the Bobath concept, were still a presence at the centre, albeit in a diminishing role. New Zealand courses began with a refresher with Jenny Bryce in 1996, and the next year we were totally back on track as we held our first New Zealand Bobath 8-week paediatric course after an 8-year gap. In 1998, we had a Bobath committee for courses, but we formalised it and established the New Zealand Bobath Association, NZBA, at our inaugural meeting in 1998, which became an umbrella organisation for postgraduate training for therapists, so that adults and children with neurological conditions could be assisted to achieve their maximum active potential and function. The association also supports the pathway for the training of New Zealand adult and paediatric Bobath tutors in line with international certification requirements. The association was under the Charities Commission as an incorporated society, and I became the first president. Now, the other events that were very significant for the future viability of courses was the return to New Zealand of Carolyn Simmons-Carlsson, occupational therapist who had been working at the Bobath Centre for many years. Also, Linda Barton, speech-language therapist, completed her second Bobath course in London and continued on the long tutor pathway to gain her tutor certification. This was followed by Anne Ricordan, physiotherapist, who completed her certification in 2008. Now we had a nucleus of core tutors, which is essential for the viability of future courses. Training and mentoring the next cluster of tutor trainees, Michelle and Dani, on the pathway is ongoing. Courses have flourished in New Zealand. Adult hemiplegia, stroke and normal movement courses with Bobath adult instructors from Israel, USA, Germany and Australia, giving basic and advanced adult courses, and with the projected development currently of the New Zealand Adult Bobath Tutor Instructor Pathway. Also in the 1990s, I did a basic adult course and 2 advanced courses over time in adult adult courses. We have relied on senior Bobath tutors from the UK and South Africa over time to keep us up to date with our professional training and to teach on our courses and evaluate our tutor trainees. Physiotherapist Margaret Mayston did her doctorate in neuroscience at London University. She has been fantastically instrumental in updating the Bobath concept in the writing up and documenting how the neuroscience, neuroplasticity theories, motor control, and current evidence-based practice and assessment tools that measure change and outcomes relate to our work and management of the children we work with. Jean-Pierre Mace has given us great advanced movement courses and workshops and co-taught with Betty Hutchin, occupational therapist from the UK, on early assessment and intervention with babies and young children. Dr. Gillian Saluji, Senior Bobath NDT tutor in South Africa, has been a wonderful influence on our New Zealand courses, and we admire her work, projects, and the research she is implementing and involved with in South Africa. Sarah Foley, Bobath tutor in Melbourne, has also taught here, and our tutors and trainees have taught on the Australian Bobath neurodevelopmental therapy courses. So, International exchanges and overseas contacts for professional development and tutor interactions with the Australian and South African Bowbath NDT associations and the European Bowbath Tutors Association have been essential so that we in New Zealand are not operating in isolation far away in the Pacific. Also, the biannual Australasian Academy of Cerebral Palsy and Developmental Medicine conferences and cerebral palsy conferences keep us up to date with current research and practice.